Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. It's been a long time. I haven't put anything out in a while. I normally only speak when I have something to say, when I'm moved to speak on a topic. And I want to rather be rather brief with this because this could be a long topic. I remember when I was doing my undergrad work, and I used to debate and argue with professors often, just based off of Islamic principles, based off of life experience, world travel, and the likes. And I used to bump heads with my professors, and it was problematic. It was not making my college experience any easier, to say the least. And a brother who I'm going to give a shout out to, I do my best not to name names, but, and you know, what he told me, I knew, but I guess I needed to hear it. So the reminder benefits the believer. But our brother Ayari, he said to me, and I can't remember if it was a private message or if it was just on Facebook in the open, but he told me to, in essence, play the back. You're not there to change anyone, but you're there to get that piece of paper. You're there to get that diploma. And I thought about what he said to me, and I said, you know something? He's 100% correct. And I knew that, but I felt compelled to uphold the haqq. I felt compelled that when I heard batil, when I heard falsehood, when I heard things that were incorrect, that I felt compelled to correct them. But the reality is that I wasn't going to change anyone's mind, more than likely. Allahu Alam. The hearts and the minds of the people are with Allah. But I would be making my situation unnecessarily difficult. Recently, I watched a short excerpt from a conference that went on. That I watched bits and pieces of it. Admittedly, I did not watch the entire conference. It was over days. And unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time to just sit and watch days of footage of a conference. But, I looked at the lineup. I looked at the keynote speakers. And Abu Usama, our brother, Sheikh Abu Usama al-Dha'bi, he talked about, to paraphrase, he said the statements, or the salafis rather, don't have all of the answers. And that is a true statement. The salafis do not have all of the answers. Nobody has all of the answers. What does that lead me to? Through my academic journey, ask me how many of my teachers were Salafi. How many of my professors were Salafi? Undergrad, 4 years of undergrad, master's degree, and now I'm working on my PhD in the Islamic University. How many of my professors do you think in my entire college career have been Salafi? The answer that I can give you, I don't know everyone's aqidah, but I'm pretty sure every professor I ever had in the West was a kafir. And now that I'm in the Islamic University, or in Islamic University, I don't want to claim to know the aqidah of my professors, but in some of them, I heard things that were not necessarily from a salafiyah. So what does that mean? Does that mean that I don't take the information? All of the information that I got in reference to sociology, which is a much needed skill set. The Muslims need people with sociology, psychology, some of the human studies skill sets, that information. We need it. Trust me when I tell you, we need it. But how many of them do you think were Salafi? Does that mean that the information that they gave me is incorrect? Does that negate the validity of the information that they provided to me? As a Muslim, my approach was to filter, and that's still my approach. I filter all information through an Islamic lens, through an Islamic filter, right? It doesn't matter who I get it from or where I get it from, but especially when I get it from non-Muslims, right? And that which is in alignment with Islam, I add it to the arsenal. That which isn't, I keep it in the back of my head because I'm going to have to use it against them at some point. I'm going to have to use it to make a point at some time. The chances of a student in their academic career having all teachers that are Salafi are slim to none. Even within the Islamic University of Medina, I believe, from what I've understood from conversations that I've had, that they have professors there who teach specific in certain things who are not Salafi. They're upon other than a Salafiyah, or what we would deem or understand to be a Salafiyah. Does that mean that they don't have expertise in that specific field? Does that mean that we should walk away jahil and ignorant because, well, they're not Salafi, so I'm not going to listen to them? That's a very immature, underdeveloped, and jejune way of thinking. If you think that, or a person or individual or group thinks that, well, I'm only going to take knowledge from those who are Salafi, when a person has clear expertise in a certain field, and you say, well, I won't take from them because they're not Salafi, you are shooting yourself in the foot, and the Muslims need to grow past that. We need to grow past that. We have to have the Islamic foundation, that is the Quran and the Sunnah. We have to have that. From that information, or from that basis, from that asl, we then can intake information and we filter it through that to discern what we keep and what we don't. Now, being in sociology, I've studied many deviant ideologies. Some of the ideologies I've studied, most people have never even heard of, right? And again, my professors were not Salafi. I don't think that negates the validity and the truth in what they're teaching. It just means I have to filter what I accept as haq, right? When we look at some of the sociological foundational perspectives, like conflict theory from Karl Marx. If I want to know how to understand conflict theory and what it entails, the nuances, the details, the complexities, and the layers, do I go to the imam in the masjid? Do I go to the person who has a degree in hadith from Medina or Qura or any other Islamic university? Or do I go to the professor who may not be Muslim, but his expertise, his years of study are in conflict theory. From that information that he gives me, I use it to understand how the society is moving. How the society is moving. In 1977, in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, there was a conference of Islamic scholars and Islamic academics. And long story short, they came to the conclusion that Western ideologies are now being integrated or basically taking over Islamic curriculum within the schools. And this is partly what I'm studying. This is partly what I'm a part of what I'm studying in the Islamic University is IOE, which is the Islamization of education and curriculum and how to maintain Islamic curriculum. That's something that I feel desperately need in the West and even in the East. In the Muslim schools, many of the textbooks that are used in the Muslim countries come from the West. We're not producing our own information. Our information is being produced by non-Muslims, and there are many anti-Islamic ideologies that have seeped into these curriculums and these books. But my point is this: when they decided that the Western thought had basically taken over the Islamic school system, the educational system, the curriculum, and how things are taught, they created this idea or this theory of IOE, which is the Islamization of education. Again, long story short, where Islam is integrated into all aspects of curriculum. It's Western thought or Western practice that there's a separation between church and state, that church is for Sunday or church is for whatever day that your religion dictates, and everything else, math, science, English, social studies, and whatever else, that's something different. And religion is not a part of it. That approach has crept into the Islamic curriculum of the schools, which is something that is actively being fought against by many of the scholars, the Islamic academics, where I attend. There is an understanding that we as Muslims, especially in the West, that we have to understand. The kuffar are not thinking like Muslims. They're thinking the way they think. They think based on deviant ideologies often. They are guided and led by consumerism, by money, by power, by wealth. And it's very complex. It's not a simple thing to recognize. And unless you have the knowledge, you won't even see that train coming. You won't even see that train coming. And in order to get that knowledge, in order to get that expertise in whatever it happens to be, 9 times out of 10, you're going to take it from a non-Salafi, more than likely a non-Muslim, especially in regards to academia. When we talk about higher education, it's going to come from non-Muslims. Okay? We as Muslims have to create our own Islamic paradigm and have our own Islamic epistemology in our approach to education. You know, the idea that we can only take from a Salafi, or we can only have a Salafi come and speak to our students, or at a conference, or in a classroom, or at a symposium, or a colloquium, or anything like that, is absolutely silly. It is immature, it's underdeveloped, and it's not realistic. And it's one of the reasons why Muslims especially amongst the Salafis, especially amongst us, the Salafis, why we are always or oftentimes in last place. Look at the lack of infrastructure that we as Salafis have. We no doubt Salafia is correct. No doubt we have the haqq with us. But what do we have to show for it? What do we have as far as infrastructure? How many Salafi schools are there where the administration and the teachers are upon a Salafiyah, and the students are taught based on Quran and Sunnah, and everything Islamic is integrated into the foundation of what's being taught, be it math, science, English, whatever. It's not just a separate entity off to the side. You have math, science, English, and then over here you have Islamic studies, Quran, and Arabic. Oh, we have a Muslim school. That's the model that we use oftentimes in the Muslim schools, and that's a Western model, and that's definitely not going to work for us. We need to have our own, but it has to be correct and it has to be based upon knowledge. If I want to know about postmodernism, what is postmodernism? Am I going to go and ask Abu Usama? Am I going to go ask one of the other graduates from the Islamic University? Maybe they studied Hadith, or maybe they, studied fiqh, or, whatever they studied. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward them immensely for what they did and what they do for our communities. But if I want to know about postmodernism, who do I go to? I go to the person who happens to have the expertise in that field, in that ideology. Now, best case scenario, I can find a Salafi who can do that. Great. But if I can't, does that mean I stick my head in the sand and don't learn? Is that what that means? Because the rest of the world is continuing to develop. The rest of the world is continuing to roll on. And if you are not aware of what they're doing and you understand how to move in an Islamic way, you're going to get rolled over. The Muslims are going to get crushed by lack of knowledge. If I want to know about genetic engineering, that's a thing. What's the Islamic position on genetic engineering? But first, what is genetic engineering in detail? Who do I go to? I'm going to go to a person who has knowledge of genetic engineering. What if I want to know about, I think it's called virology, the science of viruses? Am I going to go to the imam and ask him about the details of viruses? What about AI? What do we do with AI? AI is a real thing. What about big data? What about megadata? What about blockchain and cryptocurrency? What do we do with that? I can almost guarantee you're going to have to go to a person who's not Salafi, and a person who more than likely is not Muslim, especially in reference or in regards to Western academia. That person won't even be Muslim. He won't even be Muslim. One of the biggest deviants, and I mean he was a weirdo. His name is Michel Foucault. He was a super deviant. He was a sexual deviant. He had all kinds of, weird ideas and things. He was into some weird stuff. But he wrote a book on how the society is turning into a panoptimism. I'm mispronouncing that word. I'm tongue-tied right now. But he wrote a book about panoptics and how the world is being turned into a panoptic prison, right? And he explained that you have a tower. Just to give you an idea, you have a tower in the middle. It's in a prison. And all of the cells go around this tower, right? Now, sometimes there's a person in that tower and other times there aren't. But the people inside the cells, they can never tell if there is someone inside of the tower, right? And they're told you're always being watched. You're always being watched. I'm just giving you a small bit of his theory of this panoptic prison, or and how the society is beginning to mimic that. But based on being watched, people change their behavior, whether they're actually being watched or not. And when I read this book and I listened to the lecture and I thought about it, where can we go right now that there's not a camera? Where can we go right now? You hope the hammam, you hope the bathroom, the public bathroom if you have to go. But outside of your home, and I would even say even in your home, just today I was talking to some coworkers, and as I was talking, I looked down and what I was saying was being typed. My microphone was on. It activated on my phone. That's a part of that panoptic prison. But he explained the details and complexities of this panoptic situation that I probably never would have thought of in that way had I not read his book. Is he Muslim? No. He's a weirdo and a deviant and an evil person. But his information benefited me. I filter it obviously through that Islamic lens. But once I got the information, it opened my eye and I looked around like, man, that is true. Look up Panoptic Prison. Michel Foucault. He's a French academic. And, I'm warning you now, if you look into his life, he's a weirdo. And he's not somebody that we would obviously take life lessons from as far as religion or morality or anything like that. But when he critiques the society, he's got some information with him. What about structural functionalism? What is structural functionalism? What does it say? What does Max Weber say about structural functionalism? Does it have a place in society? Last but not least, when we talk about taking information from non-Muslims, right? We need to be aware of who and what they are taking from, because it's normally from the academics that the politicians, mold the society up from. The academics play a large part in the molding of the society. Oftentimes you'll find that through philanthropy, that politicians and groups that are that have conservative or liberal ideologies fund academic think tanks. These academic think tanks then disseminate their findings, disseminate information. But remember who they're funded from. If you want to know the agenda of something, you follow the money. Most people don't understand that. They're not in that thinking process. So once information comes from a think tank, an academic think tank, it's now going to be disseminated. How is information disseminated? How is agenda disseminated and activated in our society? How? I will tell you how. Through the media, through Hollywood, through entertainment. Let me give you a perfect example, and then I'm going to call it a day. How many people here saw, I forget which Avengers movie it was, with Thanos, right? Hold on, let me turn the light on. It's a little dark. Okay. How many people saw, and this is a rhetorical question, you don't have to tell on yourself, but how many of you saw the movie again with Thanos and the Avengers and all that? And what was the whole premise of what Thanos wanted to do? He wanted to depopulate. He said, now keep in mind, admittedly, I was in the movie theater. I'm a Marvel guy. I grew up reading Marvel comic books, so if one comes out, you know, I saw Black Panther and all that. If it sparks me, I'll go see it or I'll watch it. But as I'm sitting in the theater and I'm listening, because I filter different, and anyone who's studied anything, you tend to filter different. You listen different. So I'm sitting in the theater, and Thanos said, there is not enough resources to sustain life. Not enough resources. So we need to cut some of the life out of existence in order for others to live. What's that called? What's that called? Now, when he said that, I was sitting back in my chair like this, just watching, eating my popcorn. But when he said it, I sat forward and I looked around the room and I said, is anybody else catching this? Everybody else was just enjoying the movie, eating popcorn. And I'm looking now through, I'm really looking through different eyes. I'm like, okay, what is he getting at here? And he said it. Depopulation. Depopulation. Another movie that we studied, this was in school, it's called The Kingsman. And it was a movie with Samuel L. Jackson in it. And the premise of the movie was depopulation. Okay. So people are socially engineered and desensitized to ideologies and agendas by way of entertainment. They put it in the form of entertainment in order to bring the people's level of fighting against it down. Right? Because once you've seen it in a movie so much and then it's actually introduced, what do you connect it to? Oh, I saw this in such and such movie. Oh, that's cool. I saw that. Yeah, I know about that. Blah, blah, blah. We learned about it through a movie. But where did the concept and the idea of depopulation come from? It came from Thomas Malthus. It's called the Malthusian theory. Look it up. And I learned that from a non-Muslim. Malthusian theory came in, was the thought baby of Thomas Malthus. Late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. But it's back in the day before any of us were alive. But the point is, he was the one who came up with that idea of not enough resources on the earth to support the life. That life was going to multiply exponentially, and the resources would run out, and then humanity would suffer and possibly die out. Malthusian theory. I didn't get that information from a Salafi, but I most certainly teach it to the Muslims because I believe it's something that the non-Muslims who have power and wealth and the ability to begin something like that. I feel like that's something that we sort of need to have information about instead of sitting with our heads in the sand, not taking information because somebody may not be Salafi. I could care less if that person is Salafi or not. I'm Salafi. I'm Muslim. All I need is the information, and I'll do with the information what I need to do with it. I appreciate the information. Let's not box ourselves into a corner with stupid ideas like we can only take from Muslims or we can only take from Salafis. Again, so many different things going on in the world that we need to know. We need to understand about genetic engineering, postmodernism, big data, mega data, blockchain, cryptocurrency. What is Marxism? We are totally against Marxism. It's not it's not an ideology from Islam. We're against it. But what is it? What is Marxism? Explain it. Ask yourself right now, could you write a 10-page paper on Marxism? A 2-page paper, a 1-page paper on Marxism? But Marxism is alive and well. It's alive and well. You have to have the knowledge of what things are to be able to defend against it, and in order to be able to filter it through that Islamic lens. We can't continue to stick our heads in the sand and, with this only Salafi, only Muslim type mentality and miss out while the rest of the world is trucking forward. I have to agree with what Abu Usama said in the beginning of the AIM conference, where, he talked about this. He's 100% correct. Like it who likes it, hate it who hate it. Most of the information that I got as far as secular information was not from any Muslim. But as a Muslim, I use it to my advantage. I use it for the betterment of me and my family. I use it for the betterment of the ummah as best I can. I can't have my children growing up not knowing what any of this stuff is, because by the time they become adults, it's going to be in full swing and it's going to be something different. It's going to be something different. And we as Muslims have to know how to deal with these issues. And in order to deal with the issues, you have to understand the issues. Again, last thing, best case scenario, we get all the information that we need from a Salafi. But are you going to wait until a Salafi comes along with this information? How many Salafi psychologists do you know? We need help with mental issues, mental challenges. We need counseling for marriages. We need counseling for, sexual abuse that happens in our communities. We need help with this, that, and the third. What are we going to do? Wait till a Salafi comes along? Okay, well, I can finally get this mental issue that I'm dealing with, this schizophrenia or this whatever other mental issue I'm having. Now I can get it taken care of because this person's Salafi. When 30 other qualified psychologists just walk by you. That type of thinking is going to kill us. Let's rethink how we understand education, how we understand how information is filtered, and learn what we need to learn and figure out the direction that this society is going, the tactics and the ideologies that are most prominent that are being used to control resources and control the world and control education. We talk about liberalism and being conservative and things like this. What does that really mean? Like, do we really understand what that means? As a Muslim, I'm none of that. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not any of that. But when I hear conversations, when I listen to my coworkers, when I listen to the television, I recognize, I know what this guy is upon. The same way, if I'm listening to a Muslim and he starts talking about certain things, I say, okay, I know what he's from. Why? Because I have that knowledge. Now I know how to deal with that person. Now I know which avenue they're coming down, and I know how to maneuver. But if I just stick my head in the sand and don't do anything about it, don't learn, don't know, you're going to get rolled over. Because while you got your head in the sand, the truck is still rolling, whether you like it or not, whether we as Muslims like it or not. That's all I have to say on that. Everyone have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.